close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. Finding life along the way, melodies we haven't played. No, I don't want no rest. Echoing around these walls, fighting to create a song. I don't wanna miss a beat. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll
All right. Hey everyone. How's everyone doing? Looks like I'm live. All right. Just want to make sure. I always got to double check with make sure I'm live. Everything's going all right. So and I'm on the right setting and scene and whatnot. So how's everyone doing? I see Matt's here. Matt Steele. How are you doing? Thanks. Cool tunes. Hey, thank you. I cannot take credit for them. But they're on. I have the credits in the YouTube description of the name of the song, and it's on No Copyright Sounds, or NCS. It's a pretty cool YouTube channel. It has a bunch of songs that have no copyright with them. So yeah, so that's that. Another, before we jump in, another kind of housekeeping item. I turned, because the last couple streams, we definitely had a really awesome turnout. So I like I said, I really appreciate everyone that's here in the live chat, and for you as well, for those watching. I turned on low latency mode for live streaming, so those that are in the chat, hopefully I can get to your questions and it's a better dialogue. I felt kind of bad because I noticed the last stream was like almost a solid minute behind. I don't know how it got there, but we'll work with it. But hopefully this is supposedly is low latency. As network engineers, we know that it can be hit or miss depending on the software. So it might not be YouTube. It could be my setup as well, because I definitely don't have the top of the line, but. Yeah, just let me know if you feel like it's lagging behind at all, or I answer your question 5 minutes after you ask it. But either way, we'll jump in. So last week, and really over the weekend, I finished a lot of NSO. So this week here, NSO development, and then I also include NSO in this week as well, because I worked on it a lot. Monday was a holiday, and so I worked on it a lot Sunday into Monday, and all I could say is NSO is pretty sweet. It is a solid tool, and if you don't have any experience with it, or really don't even know what it is, it's Cisco's Network Service Orchestrator. They have a DevNet sandbox available, so I would say maybe try that first because everything's set up. But if you have and you don't really need a beefy machine, you can set it up on your laptop or your, on your desktop or server, if you have a home lab. So I would say, NSO is pretty solid, especially if you want to understand it. Really, I'll tell you this much, and I've heard a lot of feedback about NSO. It helps solidify a lot of your Yang, like learning about Yang data models and just Yang overall, because everything in NSO is based on Yang. And so it really helps solidify that. So if you're even just trying to learn Yang, I would even say jump into NSO. Yo, Nick, what's going on? I'm good. I don't know if you heard at the very beginning of this, a couple minutes ago, I mentioned I turned this stream into I changed it to a low latency stream. So I don't know if quality will be affected, but hopefully that it can be more interactive and that I won't be so far behind with the chat. So hopefully it's more real time. But anyways, yeah, that's it with NSO. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I was able to follow along. I found some really good YouTube videos and learning labs. The learning labs, I believe it was Jason Belk. He pointed me in the right direction with some learning labs and some content, and I could say they're rock solid. So if you're trying to learn NSO, definitely look up the NSO, the DevNet learning labs with it. So that was NSO. This week we're looking at on-box automation and pyATS, and I didn't include it in this column, but it's in my labs section here. So, oops. Let's see. Network Bit says, thanks for putting together this series. What you're doing is not easy. Thank you, Network Bits. I don't know if I've seen you in the chat, so I thank you for stopping by. And I'm very forgetful, trust me. So if you have, and I feel like you may have one other time, I'm very sorry. I don't remember everyone that's in the chat. I know it's not exact. I don't have thousands of viewers or anything like that, but I definitely appreciate anyone that stops by. But just to give you like a little personal background, I'm really like, I'm the type of person it's very tough for me to remember like names. Like I can literally shake your hand and you could be like, hey, my name is, and then I would even, have a conversation, and then I would leave that conversation and be like, who was that? Like not in that way, like, not in a negative way, but just like, I'm just very forgetful in that way. So, Network Bits, thank you for stopping by in the very kind words. I enjoy doing this. I've actually, I just kind of made the realization this past week that this series and like these streams that I do, I really consider part of my journey, whether it be just with the DevNet expert exam or just network automation in total. I really thought about it and was like, it's one of these things, like, it's not every day that you get people that will tune in and chat about something like, network automation, network engineering. I know there's a bunch of awesome communities out there, and we're definitely, there's people in the chat part of some of the ones that I'm part of as well. But it's just very cool that, you guys tune in, that there's people that watch as well, that can't tune in due to, time differences or whatever. So I really appreciate everyone that stops by. Matt says, yeah, I couldn't imagine studying for such a big exam and doing streams. That's some real dedication. I'm forgetful when I study a lot. Yeah, I will say, like, that's also why I cut it down to one stream a week versus doing it Tuesdays and Thursdays, for those that remember back in the fall of last year. Just because it takes a lot to do these streams. And realistically, I like to keep these streams, cover the fundamentals and then go into some practical things. But the level I need to get to with some of these topics, I do a lot off stream. But whenever I do it off stream, I try to post things on Twitter. So if you're in the stream now and you're curious, like, okay, like that was cool introduction, but you want to know like a little bit more about me or what I'm studying, more in depth, I guess, then definitely tune into my Twitter, which is the same handle as my YouTube channel, at DevNet Dan. So definitely do that if you're interested. Okay, so NSO I wrapped up early this week. I definitely will have to come back to it. So definitely I'm not calling it quits on it, because I finally figured out the kind of the steps behind developing a service in NSO. So there's kind of the template aspect, the Yang model, and then kind of how to build it and then use it within NSO and then deploy it, right? So there's a lot that goes into it. I'm going to need to practice that. I guess that's a better way of putting it. Not really like, I think I have a good understanding. I just have to practice. And really, I have to practice everything again. What a model-driven telemetry, building a Flask API, all of this. So, but I think through this first time through, it's all coming together, in my mind. So I feel pretty good about it. So NSO, Cisco on-box automation, EEM, and IOX. I don't even know I put EEM, to be honest, because it's not on the exam topics. So I'll just put IOX. So IOX is for those that don't know, it's really surrounding the application hosting. So IOX is a framework that allows application hosting on Catalyst 9Ks. Interesting little tidbit here. So I had a DevNet sandbox reserved for this stream, but then on Tuesday night I thought, well, it's pretty straightforward, because on the exam topics it just says to deploy an application. And for those that have taken like the dev core, I want to say it might be on the NAuto as well. For those that have taken the dev core though, you have to kind of know the syntax and how to deploy it. So like, I already knew the syntax. I just had to practice deploying. So anyways, I had it on Tuesday night. I was like, hey, I got the syntax down. Like, I got to start labbing. So I switched the lab to last night. And it didn't deploy. The reservation, I logged in and it said, what was the status? It said something with error. It said like deployed with error. And sure enough, it didn't work. It said that there was an issue with the Catalyst 9500, wherever that's deployed in the stack to get that lab up and running. And so it didn't work. I submitted a ticket with the DevNet sandbox, I guess the help desk. They responded pretty quickly. I submitted it last night, and this morning I had 2 notifications about it. So, but all in all, I said, hey, don't worry about it, because I'll just reserve it again in the coming days. So, but it was just interesting. It's my first time that the DevNet sandbox didn't work out, where it had an error message. So, oh well. Matt says EEM is the bane of my Encore studies. Yeah, dude, EEM is an underrated topic in the Encore studies. I'll tell you that. I learned more than I wanted to about EEM during that. But I will say, when you learn EEM, you'll have more of appreciation of how far ahead and what you could do with EEM. Not to say it's like a programming language in itself, because of course it's not. But the things you could do, you can do conditionals. If this action happens, or if this event happens, then spawn this action. So a lot of, like, I know the one use case I built out was, it looked for a specific syslog message, and if it found a certain syslog message, it would back up the config and then copy it to a backup server, all through EEM. Obviously, where it becomes difficult with EEM is deploying it to other network devices, like managing it at a higher level versus just box to box. So I'm sure there's a way to do it. So, but it's very powerful though. All right, so that was my story with the on-box automation. Basically, I didn't get around to doing it. I'll probably try knocking it out this weekend. Not too worried about it, because like I said, it's just one of the exam topics, and it's pretty straightforward. It's saying, hey, deploy an application. I want to say it might say troubleshoot. Maybe it's in here. There. Yeah, deploy. I know it might be hard to read, but I'll just read it out loud. Deploy an application on a Cisco IOS XE device by leveraging the technologies of guest shell and application hosting. So it's just deploying an application. And so that leads to our last tool here, which is pyATS. And for those that have been around or followed me on Twitter for a little bit, you'll know I love pyATS. I did a 4-part blog series on it to kind of go over some of the basics and how to get it up and running. That was back in the fall, I want to say. Yeah, I think that was back in the fall. I had that. So plenty of blog posts. I covered it before we were doing this DevNet Expert series. I covered it I'm trying to think what stream. I might have covered it because I did some DevNet Expert streams last year, like November. I think it was November, December timeline. And we did a couple streams just on pyATS as well. So anyways, I really like this tool, and we'll be diving into it tonight. We'll be keeping it to the scope of what's needed for the exam. I'm not going to go through like the how-to and kind of go all the way through everything. I'm just going to stick with what's on the exam. So that's it for kind of high level. Something to note here, registration. This obviously is a complete guess. March 2nd is in 6 days. But I did hear supposedly there will be an announcement when the registration goes live. And I heard registration is either next week or the following week. So it's about to get real, which is great. I think that it's going to be awesome. So yeah, next couple weeks. And then once I'm registered, just so everyone knows, like, yeah, it's going to be just a hint to anyone that takes any sort of, exam or certification test. If you ever feel like you need like a kick in the butt, basically, where you're like, your motivation's running out and you don't feel like you're disciplined, you definitely need to get disciplined. That's like something that's irreplaceable. But as soon as you pay for an exam and put that, mark it on your calendar, and you realize how many days you have to study, or weekend, weeks, days, that right there will whip you into shape. So I'm really excited. Obviously, I've been doing the streams for has it been a couple months already? Yeah, I think it has, because we started at the beginning of the year. So yeah, wow. It's almost, because next week's March, so a couple months already we've been doing these streams. So it won't be anything new for me, but after coughing up the change to book this exam, I definitely will be. It'll turn it'll feel different. So, but all right, let's take a look at pyATS. And first, let's take a look at our exam objectives. Let me pull them up here. So I'm doing everything in my GitHub repository. I think you all may know about it. If you don't, let me just point you to it real quick. I'll try to open it up in this Firefox VM. Oh, this is my NSO. Pull it up. Let's see. There it is. So, for those that may or may not know, I've tried to keep a lot of my, trying to track kind of what we do here on stream, and really what I do, like, off stream as well. So there's a repository that has a bunch of information, a bunch of code. It's kind of split, and what I will do probably once I take the exam, pass or fail, I'll kind of reorganize all of this, the way it should be, because some of the code is split between GitHub and then GitLab. The nice thing is, because I have the same username on both platforms, all you have to do is change the URL to get to the other one. So just to show you, GitLab. You literally just have to change GitHub to GitLab, and you'll be in my other one. I named the named the repository and everything the same. So I'll go ahead and put this in the chat, this URL, so that way, if you don't have it bookmarked, or if you're just curious, you can use this. So I'll post both the GitHub and the GitLab links. The reason they're split between them is because I initially built out the GitHub repository, but quickly realized that GitLab will be used in the DevNet expert exam, like in the lab environment. So I started testing some CI, CI/CD stuff in GitLab, which then pushed some of my code over to GitLab as well. So it's kind of split. It's very annoying, even to me. I try to be a pretty organized person, and it's annoying to me. So I will be shifting things over to one or the other, and then I'll just do a link in like a README and say, hey, this got moved over to GitLab. Here you go. Here's a link. I'm catching up on some chat here. Matt says, amen to that. I set a date for my DevNet, and man, that made me super consistent. Yeah, Matt, yeah, I totally understand. I will say this as a disclaimer, and I think I mentioned it as well. Don't book an exam thinking that will push your motivation, that'll motivate you to study, because that's really bad. Because you'll pay for the exam, and then you'll study for maybe a week because it's fresh in your mind that you put up however much the exam is, but then it'll dwindle out, and then the exam day will come, and you'll be like, crap, I gotta go for it because I already paid for it and I can't reschedule. You can reschedule exam. It's just, why reschedule it if you haven't been studying for it anyways? Nick says, I just completed my DevCore course to renew the NP last Friday, and that's the CCNP. So I know about crunch time. If I hadn't, it would have expired tomorrow. Wow. Clutch. That's good. That's good that you completed that course. I actually used that course as well, Nick. And it helped me greatly with the DevCore exam. So if you're up to it, I would say check out the DevCore exam. I know it's a lot. It definitely, a few $100s for an attempt, but it's, now that it's fresh in your mind, that course is fresh in your mind, I'd say go for it. Marcos is here. Hey, Marcos. He says, question, do you recommend the Cisco DevNet Professional DevCore Study Guide? I've never read that book. Whenever I took the DevCore exam, it wasn't available. But I've heard good things about that study guide. So, and actually, come to think of it, I think it's on sale. They're having some sort of like winter sale, I'm pretty sure. And I thought I saw the DevCore study guide for like $18, the ebook version. So for that price, for sure, I would pick it up. All right. So anyways, that's the two repositories that I've been maintaining, I guess you could say. And so the one that we'll be updating tonight is the one for GitHub. And so you'll see I created a README. I try to create a README within each of these directories that at least provides some sort of idea of what's going on. So I just copy and pasted the exam topics here so that way we can kind of reference them. So the exam topic is 3.4, modify and troubleshoot an automated test by using pyATS. Easy enough. Now, I think I've mentioned this before, but with any Cisco exam topics, always look at the verbs in the beginning. They will either say define, explain, troubleshoot, deploy, configure, right? Those are some of the main verbs that you see. So in this case, it's saying modify and troubleshoot. I didn't mean to double click on that. Modify and troubleshoot, right? So we're not creating from scratch. And I've kind of gotten used to like seeing that where not a lot of this exam is going to be from scratch. Now you may just get a skeleton of folder and file structure, but either way, you're not going from just no code, right? So anyway, so it looks like something will be existing, which is pretty neat, to modify and troubleshoot. But it looks like here, so we'll start with 3.4a, create a testbed file for connecting to Cisco iOS, iOS XE, or NXOS devices. So good news, I actually have a CML lab. I got it up and running before the stream that has iOS and NXOS devices. So we'll create a testbed for that. That shouldn't be that bad. 3.4.b is gather current configuration and operational state from devices using the Genie parsers and models included with pyATS. This will be cool because there's a lot of ways to do this. I can think of 2 ways particularly that they'll probably ask, but I think there's a lot of ways to get this, and so you can get kind of creative. And then lastly, 3.4.c, develop and execute test jobs and scripts using AE-test to verify network health. So we'll go over that. That one's a little more involved, but we'll try to get to this within the next hour or so. All right, so let's start with the test bed. And if I can pull this out, no. Wait. Oh, no. That just takes it back. All right, so we just need to create a test bed with iOS, iOS XE, and NXOS. And I'm going to actually quickly go over pyATS as well. I know I said I wasn't going to go over the basics, but I need to provide some context of what's going on instead of just kind of diving right in. Matt says starred. Oh, thank you, Matt. And for those that don't know, he started the repository, so you can favorite basically repositories in GitHub. So when he says starred, that's what he meant. Nick says, I haven't finished my flashcard questions to study for DevCore, and I just started Nick Russo's study plan. Currently going through his quick start section, and his emerging text section is so long. Yeah. But Nick's, his study plans, I think we've talked about it, and I'm actually using the DevCore study plan to help aid with some of my studies for the expert. So mostly using it for resources, alternate resources, links. A lot of it's plural site videos that have been helpful. So kind of just going through that as well. All right. So pyATS. Let's get started. So if you're familiar with basically any network automation tool platform, you have a concept of an inventory. And normally that's where you would store, device information, host name, IP address, credentials, how to log into the device, and so on. NetMiko has this concept. Scrapply has the same concept. Nornier, same thing. You can build around it. Ansible has a inventory file as well. So you can imagine pyATS does as well. And so that's where the testbed comes in. And so let me... like I said, I'm not going to go through this. But if you're interested, getting started with pyATS, I'll just put this link. I'm not going to share many more links in the chat because I just want, I want to get to doing some code. But that link is this is a really good link to show just some of the concepts of pyATS because there's a lot. If there's one thing I can say about pyATS is, and it may sound crazy, but there's almost an overabundance of documentation. And I know that people will be like, wait, that's like a good thing. It is, but if you're trying to pick this up quickly, right? So let's say you get a task that's like, please, your manager, the business unit team comes to you and says, hey, we need to automate this. pyATS, you probably can do it with pyATS, but if you never use pyATS, there's a lot of language and components to learn from pyATS. And honestly, I think that's why a lot of people start with a simpler library that just works, like a NetMiko, because it's very simple and it's very easy to get up and running, right? You define the device, you say send command. I think that's the method. That's also in Scrapply. So, but anyways, you send a command, you get output back, and then you could decide whether you want to parse it or not. So that's simple. But this is really a framework, and it describes it as a framework. So it definitely is more than just a simple send command, and we'll take a look at that. So, but the nice part is once you get pyATS under your belt and understand what it's good for, some of its shortcomings, I think you'll really enjoy all the features. It has so many different features built into it. So I personally enjoy it a lot. So let's start with, we don't really want to, let me see if there's a diagram. I like a lot of pictures. Oh, there we go. My goodness, there we go. We got some pictures. We got some pictures and diagrams here. All right, this is actually a really good. They must have just updated some of this because I don't remember seeing some of these diagrams before. So pyATS is as I've mentioned, a testing framework. And so those familiar with something like PyTest, where you run a test case. Not a test case. You run a test, and then at the very end of a PyTest test, as crazy as it sounds, you use the keyword assert. So you say assert, and you basically say, I want to verify that this value equals this value. And a lot of times, one value is fixed. One is like the value, right? Like, for example, if you're testing an API, you might create like a sample JSON payload, whereas the other one may be after you run against your library or whatever you're coding, your program, you run that payload. That's that example is the payload that you get back from your program, right? So you basically have, it's kind of that whole, it's scientific testing, right? Your independent, dependent variables. So anyways, that's kind of where pyATS, it's very relative to that, where you create tests, test scripts, which then have which have test cases, and then you can break those down further as well. But we'll stay high level today. Like I said, this library, I could probably sit on here and talk for like 3-4 hours just about this. Hey, Jared, I see you join. Glad that you're here. I saw you in the Discord mention that sometimes you forget about whenever it's Thursday for the stream. But I'm glad you're here. I've seen you a couple times here. So glad you could make it. We're taking a look at pyATS. So here's where this will get interesting. So the library has different, I guess you can say, modules to it. There's a conf module, and this kind of is what takes care of creating a test bed and configuring the network. The parsers, which basically it's a library of parsers that basically they take in the raw output. You run against the parser spits back structured data. Ops is what we'll also be taking a look at. This, as you can see, takes a snapshot of the operational state. And then you have an SDK, which there's triggers, verifications. There's so much more that goes into it. But this is kind of neat. I didn't realize this even existed. So, all right. Some of the components that we'll be taking a look at. So AE test, it stands for, I think, automation easy testing, if I remember right. Yeah, automation easy testing. This is kind of there's a structure. AE test is basically a framework, right, that every test script uses. And then there's multiple ways to run this test script. And EasyPy is one of those runtime environments that we'll take a look at. So this will come towards the latter half of the stream, but for now, we'll get started with the testbed. And testbed. Wait, there we go. Let's start with this one, testbed. So we already have pyATS installed, and they're mentioning that the testbed kind of falls under the topology module. And so there's a few ways you can create testbeds. You can create it using YAML, which basically on the back end maps to a Python dictionary. So you can either feed in a Python dictionary directly or use a YAML file. YAML file obviously is the most popular because it's very easy to get up and running. It's not a really big learning curve to it. It's just YAML, as you can see. So what we will do, and this is some information on how to create the testbed using Python. So as I mentioned, since everything is represented as objects, you can create the testbed file just using Python. But we're not going to do that. We're actually going to create a testbed file using YAML. Jared says, yeah, I made it. Yep. Yes, she did. All right. So 2 ways to create a topology within your test script. Create a testbed object from topology module and craft interconnects manually, or create a YAML testbed description file and load it using the loader function. Unless you need to create a topology on the fly, the better option is to always use the YAML file, and that's what we'll be doing. Let's see. Where is topology schema? I was trying to find. There we go. All right, so the way I've been kind of teaching myself and going through things is I'll look at what I kind of call the scaffolding or the skeleton of what the file should look like, or the code should look like, and then I'll try to fill in the blanks as I can, and then I'll go back to an example and kind of fill it in from there. So before I go further, let me get rid of all this. I had this all lined up because I was like, oh, I'll just kind of jump between things. Nah, I'm not. I'll go one by one, keep it all the same pace here. So this is my CML topology. I have a Nexus 9KV and then 2 CSRs. It said have an iOS XE, and an NXOS device. I'm not too worried about the iOS device because basically is the same as iOS XE. There are some parameters that will change, but we'll kind of go from there. All right. So let's open up this guy. All right. So one of the first things we see is that we have to name the testbed. Well, we got to first put testbed, but we got to name the testbed. And so I'm just going to do testbed, and I'm going to do 2 spaces. So I know it's kind of hard to see. But I have it set, my indentation set for 2 spaces. It could be 4 spaces, but whatever you do, keep it consistent. So here we'll call this one, or let's call it Dan's lab devices. I think I can use underscores. If I can't, I'll find out. Oh, actually, no. because it can use the name defaults to the name of the testbed file, and actually that's what I want. So the name of the file is testbed.yaml. So I'll just keep it like that. So we don't need the name. We don't need an alias. The testbed object class, that's optional. Credentials, it says credentials are optional. Now these credentials, if you apply it at the testbed level, it kind of takes that inheritance where it applies to all the devices as well. So I'm actually going to use the credentials. And so let me go back to here. Credentials. I want to call it CLI. I don't want to autocorrect. No. CLI. And so let's see. And then name of this credentials. So we have credentials, and then there's a key for naming it. And I apologize. I realize it's probably really tough to read that, so I just zoomed in a little bit. So we named it just CLI. I named it something simple. We got to put a username and password. All right. So we're going to say username, password, and they actually have this pretty neat feature to where you can use environment variables. Now, because I'm in a lab environment, I'm going to hard code them for now, but I probably before the end of the stream, I'll if I run into it while going through this list, then we'll go back. But there's a way you basically can take in environment variables right in the testbed file. You don't have to do any sort of like you don't have to use any Python libraries. It just will be built in. I believe it's called markup language within the testbed file. All right, so like I said, these are all optional servers. I think these are, you can actually put like TFTP servers or STP servers. Network shouldn't really be concerned with. Custom is only if you need, obviously additional key value pairs, but not necessary. This is where it starts getting juicy here. So we have a devices block, and this is where we'll start putting our devices in. So I think we'll do devices, or no. I think I can do it at that level. It seems kind of high though. Device name, host name goes here. Each device requires its own description within a device block. Okay. So I'm pretty sure all mine are, oh wait, this one's not named right. Let's go. Oh wait, well, I don't know why I did that. Yang-R1. And for those that are curious, you actually, in CML2, what I'm using here, you actually can generate this pyATS testbed automatically. There's a way to export it through the GUI and also through an API call. So I could cheat and just do it that way, but obviously I want to know how. I need to manually do it for the test. Now, if they have a CML environment and they say, "Hey, generate a pyATS testbed," then I might use the API call. But yeah, there is a way to do it through here, through CML. Okay, so let's start out with Yang R1. That's the name of router 1. And let's see. Oh, and of course that tells me I don't want that one. I want, there we go. Where did I go? I don't want that either. There we go. Man, I'm like, I can't find it. So you'll see, I'm going to fill out just the required fields, but you can see that you can build off any of these keys. But the next required field is type. Device type, generic string. Use this to describe the type of device. So we're using a CSR 1000 for the routers and a Nexus 9K. So we'll do for type, we'll do CSR 1000V. Oh, not 100V. 1000V. These are all optional, so I'm just kind of going through it. But you can see, like, you literally can specify the model, the platform, the series, the power, hardware. I mean, you can. The point of the test bed really also is to describe your device as much as possible. And what the test bed will do is convert it basically into a Python object. And so if you provide it more details, it actually is in your favor. But obviously for now, I'm just going through and doing what's required to get it up and running, and kind of going from there. Credentials, these are optional because all credentials in the testbed credentials block are also available at this level if not specified here. So that's where that inheritance comes in that I was explaining. All right, here we go. Connections. Connections. So let's do connections. So we created a new connection with a name. Talk to this test bed. So I just created CLI. It's interesting that these are all considered not custom, optional. So connections is required. Block describing the ways, methods, and paths connecting the device, e.g. telnet, SSH, netcom. So actually what I might do is do SSH. So instead of doing CLI, we'll do that. And we'll do IP. Yeah. I don't think it needs to be a string. Do 192. So I can tell you this is definitely like the smallest test bed I've ever created. Because most of the time, obviously, like when I'm in here, I just kind of copy and paste. But based on that, and I'm not describing anything in the topology either. These are all optional, but you can see you can describe the link. So you can describe a specific link and then the device it connects to. So I think that's pretty neat as well. Let me go back to here, the connection basics. So I didn't really mention this in the beginning, but under the hood, the pyATS library uses Unicon. It's a Python library, and it stands for, I think it stands for like Universal Connector or something like that. But it looks like unicorn, but spelled without the R. So Unicon. So you can see I'm in that library documentation right now. And you can see we have the, let's see, devices. So I have the type, the OS. Was the OS here? Did I miss it? It says it's optional, but I'm pretty sure we need that. Let me go back here. OS. Actually, I know for a fact we need it because the Genie parsers rely on the OS field. So basically, you describe what the OS is, and it has to be one of a few available options, and then it reads this value to know what parsers to use. So I know that for a fact. So where did my Unicon go here? There we go. All right, so we have the OS credentials, default, enable password, connections, CLI, protocol, SSH, and then the IP. So I think the only thing I left out was the OS and the protocol. Protocol, SSH, and this is not SSH, CLI. That's what I wanted it to be anyways. All right. So let's create a new file just called device script. Oops. And so we'll do from pyATS.topology import loader testbed equals loader I think it why is that not testbed? Testbed. I thought it was like testbed.load. This is why I need to read the documentation. I get ahead of myself because it's like I think I remember some of this stuff, and then like you actually go through it and you're like loader.load. See, I was like halfway between both. So import loader, loader.load. But I guess before I move on from there, so this is kind of what a testbed would look like. It's a YAML file. Top key is devices, and then you describe each device. I'm going to create the other two here in a second, but I want to just make sure that the credentials and everything I'm using now are good, and then we'll go and move forward with creating the other two devices. Nick said from Genie. Yeah, so that's what I thought too. There is a load option in Genie. I just forget what it's for. So loader. All right, so we'll do loader, and we'll just do testbed.yaml. And then we'll just do testbed dot connect. I guess I could print something. Oh no, it's working. And by the way, these methods and like how I'm kind of just writing this from scratch, it's only because I have a little bit of knowledge. As I say that, actually, I think I know what this is. Connection timeout. I need an enable password because I'm pretty sure for whatever reason on that device. Let me just double check. For whatever reason, it goes into, it doesn't jump right into privilege mode. Yeah, so just credentials. Okay, credentials, default, and then enable. That's what I thought. Default, enable. So now it should log in. There we go. So just to highlight, it logged in and I used my script here. I know I just went through that very fast, but I did Python device underscore script.py and just ran the script. And you see in the script, it's pretty simple. I created a testbed object using, I basically loaded this, well, you can see, I don't have to even look. But yeah, the load function or method basically returns a testbed object. And that testbed object then has a bunch of other methods. So just to kind of show you what those are, we won't print. It'd be easier to do an interpreter as well, but I'll just do this. Testbed. And then we'll just print type. So if you're kind of looking into network automation and you're like, man, I run into a lot of Python issues, I would highly suggest these two these functions here. They're built in. One's called type and one's called dir. Type will tell you what type of object that you have in here, and then dir will show you all the available methods and attributes. So let me, and I apologize that that was low. So yeah, I'm just running Python or this device underscore script.py. So it won't connect, but you'll see here the answer to our first print statement. It returns a testbed object, and this is actually found in the Genie library. Going back to I think what Nick mentioned, that probably that load method was in the Genie library, but it's so weird because pyATS and Genie, they're technically two separate libraries, but there's a lot of dependencies with one another. So there are ways to run Genie without pyATS. I just want to make that clear, but you can see here, for example, right, that our testbed object is coming from the Genie library. Everything from this square bracket down to this square bracket are all the available attributes and methods. So you'll see that we can add a device ad hoc. Let's see, where's the connect method I just used? Here's the connect method I just used. Find links, interfaces, removing a device, right? So there's a bunch of methods and attributes in here as well. Parse is here, so you can parse out a command across all your devices in your testbed, and we'll do that. But these two, like I said, dir and type are two, dir especially because it shows you all the available attributes. This is all, I'm doing this in a Python script, but it's much easier to do it in like IPython or basically a Python interpreter. But so, all right, so we have that down. So we have our devices. So the nice part is I'm just gonna copy and paste the other two. So we have router 2, and that's just 161. And then let's pull up NXOS. Yes, it has the same password as well. NX SW1. And then this is just Nexus 9 KB. And technically, I think I should use the platform command for this. And I think it's N9KB. And that's what I might do. Platform. And we'll say switch. Router. Because the type is really what the device is, like what type of device it is. but in the platform really describes like more particular details about it. So, all right, so we have 161, 162, and they all share the same credentials, which is why, NXOS. And I'll show you where I'm getting all these credentials, like the OS being NXOS versus spelling out Nexus. Same thing with iOS XE. There's a reason for that. But, all right, so we should be able to connect to every device using the script. And so if we uncomment this, and I'm going to make this really big so that way we can see all of its glory. There you go. And just like that, it's all done. And you can go through all the output to verify, but you can see just based on the prompts, you can see the different host names. You can see Yang R1. Down here, you can see Yang R2. And then lastly, you can see Nexus Switch 1. Some of you might be asking, wait, Dan, there's it's configuring your device. Well, kind of. It is, bottom line, it is. But it's what it's doing is basically avoiding your pagination and avoiding any distractions, because remember, at the end of the day, it's just it's basically just pulling what's on the screen off. It's screen scraping. And then the real magic comes when you're able to parse that data and then throw it into a test case, right? So to do that, though, they turn off logging to console. They do the terminal width, and I think there was one other command. There was one other command where basically anything that comes to the screen, it's going to pull, and it just helps eliminate some of that weird, any sort of weird actions that might come up, any weird logs or anything like that that might be caught in the output. Jared, I might have caught you kind of late. I think your message has been up here for a little bit, but you said I do that same thing and then have to go check the docs. I think you're probably referring to where you start something and you're like, oh, I got this. It's just like whenever, you get something from like an IKEA or something like that. And you're like, oh, that's cool. I got my tools. I'll take care of this. I can just build it without looking at the instructions. And then by step 3, you're, or what should be step 3, you're like, what? Where's this one go? Where's this screw go? All right. So that's a test bed. And so if we go back to, and I'm going to get rid of some of this. So if we go back to create a testbed for connecting to iOS XE, or NXOS devices, we're pretty much good. We have the required fields. Now I will say that if you go back to here, this is what's required, right? Your credentials, your connections, the type, and the OS. But based on our schema, right? This is everything that could be in your schema here. So, we have devices, the name, but you can have an alias. You can change the device object class. The type, region, role. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on here. So, don't look at my test bed and say, oh yeah, that's it. But you can see there's a bunch of credential or facts you can put in your list. All right, where are we going now? What do we want to do? Let's get rid of that tab, and let's get rid of that, and let's see. Let's go to my markdown. Gather current configuration and operational state from devices using Genie parsers and models. So this will be interesting. So there's going to be 2 ways that I want to do this. One is using a Python script, and then the second is using the pyATS command line or CLI tool, command line, whatever you want to call it. All right, so let's do parse device output. So we'll start with parsing device output, and then we'll go to learn, because I think once you see learn, you'll be like, oh, this is great. Nick asks, is there a limit on how many devices to have in a testbed file? Thinking about a max number of devices that sends commands asynchronously before we might start seeing performance issues, if you know. Off the top of my head, I don't, but it does say somewhere in this documentation, because I had the same question. As far as number of devices in your testbed, I don't think there is any. That's just, unless there's like a YAML limit. I don't think there's a limit to the number of devices. I have seen a lot of people build like utility functions to where, let's say they have netbox as their source of truth, or inventory, I guess you could say, however you want to call it, where they'll do they'll interact with the netbox API or use an SDK and pull the inventory, and then convert that inventory into a testbed approved to fit, I guess, not a testbed approved, to fit that YAML schema, that testbed schema that we just looked through. So if you're thinking about using this across your entire network and you have thousands of devices, I'm sure it will scale. And the reason I would say I'm sure it can scale is because before this was brought out into the world and open sourced, it was used for many years within Cisco to test their software, and test, topologies and whatnot. So I know it can definitely scale. It's just, but as far as the number of workers, I'm not sure. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you can look it up in the documentation. All right, let's see. Our next task is to parse and learn data, parse and learn features. So let's see. The topic is the benefit of parsers, how a parser works. A parser converts data output into a Python dictionary, which stores key value pairs. I think definitely let me know in chat if you're unfamiliar with parsers or what they do or the importance of them. I can definitely explain that, but at a high level, basically it takes raw output and converts it to something that Python can recognize and that you can use and programmatically interact with within Python. It allows you to use different communication interfaces, CLI, REST, netconf, and so on. Parsers create standardized output for commands, which means that you can write and run reusable automation scripts. Parsers are typically written using the Genie meta parser module. So this is a really good example here because there's a lot going on here. So this looks like a show interface status, something like that. And so you'll see, like, it's a nice little pretty table, right? Like, that's something that we could view as engineers and say, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like, it's very organized. But then a parser comes in and makes it look like this, right? And so this is a Python dictionary, and it with a bunch of key value pairs. It's very easy to manipulate, to extract data. And so this is like super key to get to from this. And that's what these parsers allow you to do. And I'll show you. So if you click on the parsers link here, there's actually, this is a really cool site. And so you see down on the left side here, all the different, there's parsers, models, clean, APIs, triggers. There's a bunch of features that you can use. We'll just be focused on the models and the parsers tonight. But if you look up, hold on. Sometimes this page like takes a second. Like you have to like reload it for it to fetch the data. Let's see. There we go. See, I just had to reload it. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what it does on the front end, but Matt says Genie parses the bomb. I was using text FSM. Yeah, Genie's very there's a lot of parsers available. I have found myself going back to text FSM for some things, but, and this is a big but, if you're up to it, Matt, you can create your own parser. And for as crazy as it sounds, it's not that bad. And on top of it, if you find a command that you're like, man, I wish there was a parser for this, you can create it and then contribute it back to the project. So like, I created a parser for Genie it's the, what command is it now? Show license summary, right? So the reason I created it was because at work I needed a way to parse this command because a lot of, as everyone knows, Cisco is moving to a smart licensing model. And so the normal show license all, show license brief, or show license brief, or just show license, I think, that command doesn't work. So show license summary, basically, I created this schema, which I thought was useful, right? Where it will tell you the license usage. It'll give you the name of the license, the entitlement, the number of licenses, and whether it's active, registered, and so on. So that's what a schema looks like. Very basic, as you can see. And actually, this section up here was not there. So someone added to what I put in, because this was like last August, I believe. I contributed this, but it looks like someone built on to what I had and actually got more information about the account. So like a smart account and a virtual account. That's pretty cool. I didn't really think about that when I initially built it, so that's cool. Matt says, haha, I knew that was coming. But aren't they written in heathen language, regex? Yes, there is a lot of regex. But I'll just go to the source code. So this is show license summary. Yeah, so you can see it's a lot of regex. But the way it works, though, is you compile a regex statement. So basically you put an example of what it may look like, right, of what the output might look like, and then you create a regex statement to match that output, and then all it does is, based on the output, it goes line by line, splits the lines up by the carriage return, right, and then it just matches. So that's pretty much it. It goes down through and it says, hey, if there's a match, then assign that value to this particular key. And then, as you can see, actually, I think this was modified as well, that they set a default value. So if something's not found, it will set a default value for you. But yeah, I mean, basically it's just regex. Hey, you asked, Matt. That's all I got to say. You asked. Anyways, that's not why we're here. Not for me to boast at all. But what I was trying to get to was, it's very easy to create one if you don't see one. And Genie has a really good contribution guide. So if you want to contribute to an open source project, like Genie, you can, they have rules in effect. So like when you create something, you have to create unit tests for it, and then run those tests against your new code, run it against the existing code, make sure that you didn't retroactively break anything. So yeah, so it's interesting. It's an interesting process as well. You learn a lot. Jared said, regex is neat. I've been using it recently with Notepad++. Yeah, it is neat. Very neat. Matt Steele said, haha, I did. Yeah, Nick says, I seen more regex in DevNet than in the CCIE route and switch from grep, SQL input validation, XPath expressions, and now these pyATS parsers. Yeah, I think before the DevNet track, the only time I saw regex was like, I know you can use it with BGP to match, I think you can use it a way to match AS path, if I remember right. But, yeah. All right. So this is parsing. So what do we want to parse? That's the real question. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can run it through the command line, which we'll do that. We'll do that first. I guess maybe show version. If anyone has a preference to what you want to parse, feel free to put it in the chat. Jared says, I didn't say it was neat. That's true. I was reading Matt's... Yeah, I was reading Matt's chat above yours. I apologize. You did say regex is powerful, though. That's a pretty bold statement. No, you're totally right. It just can get messy if you don't have, get it under control. All right. Let's see. So we'll do show version. So we'll connect. So I'm just going to run it against the entire test bed. Show version. Let's see what happens. It should just print out, I think. Oh, no, I gotta save it to a variable, I think. Parsed. Shover. Oh, and I think I can do log. There's a way to log. I think that's a way to do it. Or it's what the? All right. Let's just see if that works. There we go. Look at all that pretty output. So this is all of our output here. So what we'll do is we will say we want to get, let's just get the NX switch output. The show version for it. It might fail out. Shouldn't though. There we go. And while we're at it, let's just do a pretty print. If I have it. Oh, you know what? I think I have it in my environment. That way it looks nicer. And I know I don't have to parse against run this against every single device, but you'll kind of get it. Jared says, haha, this is why I commend you for being able to interact while also trying to focus. Nick asked for show tech. I'll take a look if a parser is available for that. Jared's making a laughing. And I doubt there is, but actually I don't think I'll run it, but I will check here. Hold on, show tech. No. That's against all of so I didn't really highlight this, but these are all the different operating systems that you can that parsers are available for. So where you saw me in the testbed file put like OS was equal to iOS XE, and then it was equal to NXOS. This is how I got that, right? Because basically on the back end, pyATS pulls that OS value and then uses that to identify what parser list to use. But yeah, Nick, sorry, there is no show tech. And you know what? I would feel really bad for the person. I would actually go to like the GitHub, the source code for show tech, if someone actually parsed all that out and like contribute and sponsor them. I really would. Show hardware. That might be a good one. Let's do that. Let me look up anything related to hardware. Show platform hardware, show platform throughput. Man, they got some serious stuff. Do you have to complete the commands that spell out show? No. And as you can see here, I just put in hardware. Show users. Okay. Let's see that one. Users. That one does have a parser. Pretty simple output too. And I don't know what that is. Sure. All right. So parser for show users. So let's just do it. All right. So there's a parser available for iOS XE, and there is one for NXOS as well. Okay, that's good. Let's go to here. There you go. So here's show users. There's the username. And you can see it's kind of neat too because it executes and shows the raw output. So what you would normally see. Obviously this is like fumbled together because of how wide my terminal is. Like it's not that wide and the font's huge. But you can see what the raw output looks like, and then you can see what the structured format is as well. So yeah, pretty good stuff. All right, so that's parsing output. As you can see, like there's a bunch of parsers. So if I just clear this out, there's thousands. I mean, you can see this little bar here. There's thousands of parsers. I forget what the total number is, but I know iOS XE was definitely over, like I thought, over 4,000 parsers. Maybe not iOS XE particularly, but total. But you can see, like, I mean, there's so much information here. So a bunch with BGP is kind of cool too. So like one last thing on parsers, then we need to jump to learn. I don't know if we'll get to this last develop and execute test jobs and scripts using AE test. What I might do with this one is I'll work on this probably over the weekend and post an update on my Twitter. So just look out for that. I'll probably do that because that one's a little more involved as well, especially understanding kind of the testing framework. So it would take like explaining the testing framework and then building the test jobs. And I'll try to think of some good scenario for that. But anyways, one last thing with the parsers. What was I going to say? I had an issue where I'm using pyATS to create like an automation test script, and I needed to verify IPv6 routing, and the release I was on didn't have IPv6 routing available, but I knew it was being worked on because you can see like the activity in GitHub, right? So I waited a release or two, and finally it showed up. And so all I did was I updated my version of pyATS and Genie I was using, and the parsers were available for me. So, and you can see there's a bunch now. The one I was interested in was route. Don't make me a liar. It was here. Route. Here we go. Show IPv6 route. Okay. So that's Nexus. That's IOSXE. Distributor class. So this is for Nexus OS. I don't know what the distributor class means for that, because I'm pretty sure I tested it with IOSXE. I don't have IPv6 routes. I don't even know if I have IPv6 routing enabled on the devices in my lab. So even if I tried it right now, I don't think it would work. But you can see the schema. It's pretty awesome. But anyways, that was one example. Like, it wasn't available, and I also I didn't have the time to build it myself. But you know, I think somewhere I saw it being worked on. I don't remember. It's not like they have a big dashboard where it's like, hey, like, if you're looking for this parser, it's going to be coming up this month, because a lot of it is community driven and depends on a lot of the contributors for the parsers particularly. I do know Cisco does have a dedicated team to this product, so some of the big features and whatnot, obviously I think it's open for contribution, but it's just too many. There's not enough hours in the day for someone that, you know, isn't working on it full time to be building, you know, some of these larger features. So okay, so now that you've seen the parsers, let's check out the models. And you might be like, all right, what's this about? So this is pretty cool because, as you saw with the parsers, they're divided up by operating system type. So IOSXE, NXOS, Junos, all that. Whereas the models aim to provide a uniform structure, right? So as an example, if you run show IP route on Cisco IOSXE and then do a similar command on Junos, you might get different data, different output, and then ultimately different way that's data is parsed. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to find out routing information from both devices. What these models do is it runs a series of show commands, or kind of, I'll just say show commands, but it kind of can go across any platform. Collect the data and then output it in a common uniform structure. So that way, no matter what changes, the device type, anything like that, if you learn these models or this model data, then you'll be able to parse it the same way. So I'll do BGP, for example. So there's two ways to look at it. There's let me pull it up here. The conf and the op structure, right? So the conf structure shows you ways that basic the configuration side of it, and then the op structure obviously is the operational side, and you can see basically what this chart does. And I know it's hard for it's tiny for me to read. I know it's probably impossible, but I'll zoom in right. Oh geez, not that far. You can see XE, XR, NX, and it shows where so here on the left side is the structure, right? Like where these, like the keys, right? So you see BGP device attributes enabled. Where does it look for this enabled tag, right? Well, in XE and XR it doesn't. In NX it verifies that feature BGP is there, right? Where does it look for the BGP? I hate that it highlights the whole thing right here. Where does it look for the BGP ID? well, for XT, it looks for router BGP, and then the BGP ID is followed that, right? So your local ASM, basically. And then in XR, it could be in the configuration. It could be in one of these show command output. And then in NXOS, it's here. So you kind of get the idea, right? It's trying to find one value, but it might find different avenues to find that value. But at the end of the day, you're going to get one output, one structure that looks the same no matter where you got that output from. So it's kind of, if you've ever heard of the term data model, well, I mean, I know you have. If you've been tuning the streams where we talk about Yang and how it's a data modeling language, that's kind of where that comes from, right? Because it defines a common structure that has constraints. So you can see here the BGP ID has to be an integer in this range here, and then it's mandatory, right? And just as like a sidebar to all of this, I've seen I think it might have been a Cisco live show or slides or discussion, I should say, but they tried modeling these models after Yang data models. So they tried staying as close as they could to the Yang data model. So that way, if you look at a pyATS model and then look at a Yang data model, they should be relatively close in structure. I don't know. I've never verified that, but that's what I've heard. So how do we learn these models? How do we learn this? Well, we're going to learn device features. And this is just showing you how you could parse per device and all that. So anyways. All right, learn device feature. So whereas we were using parsers to parse data, we're going to use those models to learn different functions or features, right? Each of those models you can call a feature. That's kind of like interoperable but in this language. So you learn a function or a feature or a model. So the way it's learned is you have the ops module for stateful network validation. The term feature typically refers to a network protocol represented as a Python object. Many networks use a combination of features, BGP, SPF, and interface. As you can see here, that's basically what these models are, just different features or protocols used on a network device. Some of them are a little more high level, like prefix list, but you kind of get the idea, right? Spanning trees on here, EIGRP, BGP, ACL, and so on. The learning mechanism explained, that's basically the same thing. What I kind of explained this where it takes a snapshot of the network and then spits out a kind of a uniform output, so that way you can compare two different devices if needed. Obviously, I think with the learn aspect, you would want to learn about the network device, and then 5-10 minutes comes by, and then you would learn again and then do a diff, right? So, all right, so how do we learn a single feature? So we could do it from the CLI, or we could do it from a Python script. I've been doing everything from a Python script, but what we'll do with this one is we'll learn from using the CLI, and then do a diff on the different outputs to show you what's different, and then we'll kind of wrap up from there. All right, so if we go to here, so we'll do pyATS learn, and we're going to learn BGP testbed equals testbed.yaml devices. I think that was the term used, devices, yeah. So we'll do devices Yang R1 because the reason I'm only doing specific devices here is because the Nexus device doesn't have it. And actually, that might be a good thing. So the Nexus switch doesn't have BGP enabled. So, but R1 and R2 have a an eBGP connection between them, or neighborship. And then you want to use an output folder, so we'll just do output folder. Actually, let me check something real quick. Oh, don't tell me it's running. There we go. Output. There we go. Output, and then output. So there we go. So we're learning BGP right now across 3 devices. So Yang R1, Yang R2, and then Nexus switch 1. And you can see here that we learned in about 7 seconds. We learned for Yang R1, the op structure and the console connection, both text files are in the output folder here. And you can see I open up the output here. Let's just go to here. This is console output. There we go. So if we look at ops, and I know it's tough to read this, but anything that says underscore ops that ends in underscore ops, that's basically the parsed output here. And you see total memory used, the hold timers, the session, the networks it learns, all this fun stuff, right? And obviously all this you can parse out. And you can kind of see it looks kind of funky if you look on the right here, how nested it is. So like check this out. Look how freaking nested this is, right? Like if you're trying to get to this next hop, could you imagine going to it? We won't have time to look through it now, but there's the Genie library offers what they call their useful libraries, and there's a module called DQ. It stands for dictionary query, and it allows you to, instead of running, because traditionally you would have to do a bunch of for loops to get down to this next hop attribute. The DQ module, you can basically say, I want next hop, I want the value of next hop, and I want to look, starting at this level, I want to look through and try to find next hop. So, yeah. So, anyways, that's another cool. Let's save it for another day. All right. So, let's see. What do I want to do? Oh, so what I think I'm going to do is, now that we have all the output, right? So we have all the ops, all this ops output is, and you can see here, I figured nothing would show up because, yeah, there's no information for the Nexus switch. But for Yang 1, R1, and R2, you have all this output. You can see it along the right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down the interface on R2 that connects to R1, and that BGP neighbor relationship will go down. We'll learn the network again, and then we'll do a quick comparison. So let me go back here. All right. So netconf2. I think it's, oh, gig 2, yeah. Gig 2. So we'll do shut up on, we got to go to gig 2, shut. So I'll wait for BGP to go down. I don't think logging console is enabled. All right. So just to, yeah, so we're in an idle state here. Okay. Okay, so now that we're in an idle state, let's go back in and learn, do the same exact things. We'll do I'm not even going to. I'll do output 2. So I'm learning everything again, but I'm going to put it in a different folder. So I'm actually going to put it in a new folder called output 2. The reason for that is I can then run a diff between both folders and using pyATS, and then there'll be one output that says, okay, we looked at both folders, we compared the files, and we noticed that there's this difference. So if I go to output 2, we should see that this yang2, let's see, I'm trying to find where it shows the state. Yeah, state prefix idle. Yep. Cool. Perfect. So let's check the documentation on doing a diff. Alright, so it runs the show command, stores the output in JSON format, displays a learned summary, so the connection log, the structured JSON, and then the device console, which you saw the 3 files for each. You can get the operational state of multiple features. Got it. You can learn multiple across multiple devices. Done. Okay, don't need to do that. Okay, so now we're getting into the configuration side of the house, which we don't really need to do. Here we go. Comparing network states. So once you know how to parse and learn, you can start doing learning and diffing on the operational state. So use the diff functionality to monitor your network. It enables you to compare snapshots, right? So what we did remember back here is output and output 2 are snapshots of the network, right? Because we use the learn functionality to create those snapshots. So for any 2 Python dictionaries or objects with a consistent data structure, the system compares the keys and identifies the differences. You can exclude keys you don't want to compare. How stateful validation works: take a snapshot, make or observe change in your network, take another snapshot, use diff. So we've done that. We've created one, put it in the output folder, shut down the interface, and then did another snapshot that went to output 2. All right, so how do I do this? Let's see. There you go. Yeah, I thought it was just Genie diff, but so yeah, so this is using the Genie diff, which is fine. Let me see. I always like doing the help. Oops. So, but it's pretty simple. We'll do output 2. I don't know. I was gonna say I don't know if it actually prints anything out. But actually, what I might do is say output diff. So now it's going to go into a folder called diff. And we can delete this file. So based on that, Genie diff, and then between the 2 outputs, we can see what changed. So whatever is minus, basically it was in the first output, first snapshot. Whatever's plus is in what's now in the second snapshot. So without really going too far down, you can see that the state was established, and you can see the minus. but in snapshot 2, the state was idle. And then the minus, like there's some things that obviously like all this would disappear as well. Session state established, like all the details of the being established would disappear. So that would make sense because the session state went to idle. The BGP neighbor counts, the message counts obviously would disappear. Routes per peer. So basically it shows that, yeah, we had a configured neighbor, but everything minus, remember, was in snapshot 1, but not in snapshot 2. You can see I was just advertising a /32 route, and that was no longer there. That was no longer there in snapshot 2, which makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and just re-enable that interface. And so that way, I'm not going to relearn anything like that because I think that was a good example. There we go. It's like, why is it not? It's in a down state. I'm like, it's all virtual. So, I must not save that, but that's what I wanted to get rid of right here. Connection. So the log standout here. So when we connect to the device, there's a log standouts equals false. And I got it right the first time. I guess it just didn't recognize it. But basically, when you connect to a device, you have these options here. So you can actually say, like, if you can trick it to where, like, instead of configuring and doing like the terminal width and no logging console, like those configuration commands that I showed earlier, you can actually change that to where it doesn't do that. So there's no configuration, and that helps in a lot of situations, especially like if you have scripting accounts, whether that be with TACACS or anything like that. Most of the time, especially early on in your automation journey, you'll probably want to have limited access or limited privilege on that account, because you don't want it to have config rights and then all of a sudden you test some script that you thought was on your test network, but it was in your prod, and then you take down half the network because you were testing some random script. So that init exec commands and init config commands, if you basically pass it an empty list, it will basically trick the Unicon plugin not to send any of those configuration commands. So and just to see if it works, let me just check it real quick. No. False. False. I thought that's the way it was. There we go. Yeah, I just had a little typo, I think. So what it's doing now is it's going through and connecting all the devices, but instead of providing all that that log output to show you like what it's doing at the device level from the the console level, I should say, it's just printing out the end result, whatever we want it to print. So we're only printing the parsed output. Actually change that. But yeah, that's all I have for tonight. I didn't get to that last section. Where's it at? README. There we go. I didn't get to this last section, develop and execute test jobs in scripts using AE test. It just would be too much to go through tonight, so I'm gonna hold off on that probably till this weekend. So look out if you follow me on Twitter. I'll definitely be posting some things with specifically around the test jobs. If you're curious about them, let me try to find them here. If you're curious about them, not getting started, not Genie. Let's look up pyATS documentation. If you're curious about AE tests or the testing, the test jobs and whatnot, like I said, there's an overabundance of documentation on most of this library. So if time is not a factor for you, feel free to run through all this. But AE tests would be a good place to start. It explains how the testing infrastructure is built, how the framework should be deployed and used, and then it dives into EasyPy, which is the standardized runtime environment, which provides your logging, your archiving, all that. So there's two ways to run AE tests, one in standalone mode, as they call it, and then one in this EasyPy runtime. I've used both, and they're good for their own use cases. So definitely, if you have a chance, read over them if you'd like. It kind of gives you a better understanding of everything we went through tonight at a high level: parsing, learning features, doing those diffs. All that data, you can imagine, like, hey, if you got the data, you can compare it, you can make certain assertions on it, and kind of use this testing framework to run through all of that. And so highly encourage you to look through it. Like I said, this is a pyATS and Genie are solid libraries. It's a lot. It's very heavy compared to other network automation libraries, but well worth it once you kind of get it down and have an understanding. But I'll tell you this, don't feel like you need to understand every aspect of it, because you just can't. I personally don't. I feel like I learn something every time I open up the documentation, whether it's a new feature or there's something I'm doing that I could be doing better. So as with anything with programming, don't feel like you have to master it before you jump into it. Jump into it, try it out, and then I'm sure along the way you'll find better ways to do things. So, all right. Well, that's all I have. I'll give it like a little bit I'll give it like 30 seconds or so, just in case I did fall ahead. If anyone wants to put anything in the chat, any last questions before I log off for the night. But if not, like I said, I appreciate everyone that has joined the chat, that kind of has been going back and forth with me on things. I really do. I think it was brought up, Jared might have mentioned it earlier in the stream, that about being distracted and whatnot. I honestly, from my perspective, this stream is, yes, it's helpful in studying and whatnot, but it really is to like just bring in that community and that collaboration that others may need to feel or want to feel, especially whenever they're studying for these exams. So that's really what it's for. Yeah, Nick said, thanks for the stream again. I tried to get more folks from the Discord to come in. Hey, Nick, I appreciate that. I really do. I know you definitely look out for me, so I definitely appreciate it. Yeah, if they come on in, anyone's welcome. I'll tell you that. Whether you're studying for a DevNet certification or you're just curious about network automation. So right now we're focused obviously on the DevNet expert, but if you've been here, you know that we just talk about anything. We talk about network automation. We even talk about network engineering. But yeah, Nick, I appreciate it. Thanks for trying to bring some more folks in. All right. Well, I will be logging off for the night, and if you have questions, as always, I'm available on Twitter. You can just tweet at me at DevNetDan, or if you would like, you can DM me as well. I don't think I have my DMs open, but I kind of have that, like, I can accept specific DMs. Like if you have a legitimate question, I'll definitely take any question you have. And I don't mind, chatting over Discord or Twitter, whatever means. So thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you all, I think, next Thursday. Let me take a look at the calendar. Yeah. I think next Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday. I don't know why I was tripping on that for so long. But yeah, we'll be looking at APIs, Cisco product APIs and SDKs over the next 2 weeks. And we're getting close. We're about halfway. This week is about halfway till that final week. So we're making it. Oscar says, "Hey guys, just came out of work. Thanks for the message, Nick." Yeah, hey Oscar. Thanks for joining. I'm just wrapping up here, but yeah, thanks for joining though, making the effort. If you have any questions about anything, tonight we went over pyATS. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Cisco pyATS and Genie, but I have my study plan here posted. So yeah, NSO pyATS was this week. On-box automation using guest shell and application hosting. But next 2 weeks, we'll be looking at APIs and SDKs. Specifically, we'll be looking at Meraki, WebEx, NSO, and ACI. I think that's it. But that's a lot. Oh, DNA Center too. I don't know why I forgot that one. Anyways, I gotta double check the APIs that we're going over. But yeah, this will be interesting. So, all right. Well, I hope everyone has a good night, and I will probably talk to you all probably on Twitter. If not, I will see you all next Thursday. See ya.
Till I get up, time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And